Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in and welcome to The Cutting Room, the movie show by All the Right Movies. My name is Luke and with me in the clan ATRM are Matt and Westy.
Hello.
Hello.
This episode has been created specifically for our noble warriors, our Patreon supporters.
Warrior ports, every one of them.
Yeah. They get these bonus episodes a full 12 months before they go out on general release. Thank you guys very much for your support.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Not only is the show created for our patrons, they also get to vote on what film we discuss on the show. We picked out a film each and put them on a Patreon poll to see who would win the battle. And I wanted to talk about Blue Velvet. Matt put When Harry Met Sally into the mix, and Westy went down his path most travelled by selecting Braveheart. But he proved that if you keep on banging on the door, sooner or later someone will answer, and this time it was the Patreons who answered Westy. Braveheart galloped to victory. So it's finally here. What have you got to say for yourself, Westy? Why
Get the
talking about
fucking man! Yes! I want to talk about it because it's just so monumental for me anyway. It's just one of the biggest films I'd seen at the time. I went to cinema and I went to see Toy Story with a friend of mine from school. So we went to see Toy Story. I came back, my mum and dad had rented this and it was like halfway through. I think it was Battle of Stirling. And I walked in and it was like, my dad's like, oh, you'll enjoy this. So I ended up watching like the last half and then I watched the first half the next day.
Yeah.
And I saw that battle sequence and I was just like, fuck me. This is insanely good. And I've just fell in love with it. I think it's just a great, great film. It ticks all the boxes, and I just think it's just fucking massive. Love it.
Yeah. Not surprised with that reaction. What about you, Matt?
Well, appropriately, I first saw this at Christmas because I'd missed it at the cinema and I was given it on VHS as a Christmas present that year. So it got a Christmas evening. Everyone was stuffed from food. We'd all watch whatever we wanted to watch on TV. And we also had like the traditional film on an evening that we hadn't watched before. So I said, well, can I put Braveheart on? And I remember both my parents were like, well, yeah, go on then. And I think they thought it was going to be fairly ridiculous having Mel Gibson play Scott.
Oh, no the now, anyway.
No the now.
And I think they
which it is.
Thought, and I think they thought it was going to be a bit like, you know, Kevin Costner's Robin Hood, that type of film. But then it turned out to be one of those great experiences where after about like 40 minutes, I just realized everyone was so engrossed. So really memorable first viewing. There are things in this film I'm a huge fan of. Some things I'm not so much a huge fan of. And I think, to be honest, once Wesley gets started, I'm just going to go and do my Christmas shopping. I'll just pop back at the end.
Yes.
Very wind up and let him go. That's all we need to do.
Yeah, fine.
Well, I hadn't seen this film for years, a good 15, 20, maybe more. Wow. I saw it at the cinema when it was first released. And as you fellas know, I don't usually go for the historical epics, particularly ones that are 3 hours in length. But as there's not much in the way of history here, I absolutely loved it.
Epic.
Perhaps the time has come to reinstitute an old custom.
I even went to see it twice at the cinema. It's an absolutely massive film, full of passion, awe-inspiring locations, blood and thunder, with an outstanding James Horner score as well.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
I haven't seen it for a long time, probably because of the backlash that it's received, because of its historical inaccuracy, and certainly because we've since learned that Mel Gibson's a terrible person. So those things are clouding it for me. But as always, and we seem to be saying this a lot recently, I think, we're talking about the film itself. We're judging the art, not the artist here, nothing else. Yeah. So there's a lot to get into the film, but I don't really know, like you said, Matt, I don't really know why we're here. I mean, this is the Westy show, and I'm excited for that.
Well, you know, as it is. It'll be fine.
So, are we ready for Braveheart?
Hold. Now!
In 13th century Scotland, unassuming farmer William Wallace returns home to raise crops and, God willing, a family. He quickly gets married to his childhood sweetheart Murren, but the English rule in Scotland tightens its grip, leaving Wallace a grieving widower. Driven by rage, Wallace and his small army hack their way through the English in a quest for freedom for his countrymen and countrywomen. but the cruel King Edward the Longshanks' sly tactics and a betrayal from Robert the Bruce and the noblemen of Scotland lead William to a bloody, inevitable ending. Written by Randall Wallace, Braveheart was directed by Mel Gibson and produced by Gibson, Alan Ladd Jr. and Bruce Davey for Icon Productions and distributed by Paramount and 20th Century Fox. Gibson stars in the lead as William Wallace, Sophie Marceau stars as Princess Isabel of France, and Catherine McCormack as Murren, the two women who capture William's affections. A stellar support cast include Brian Cox, Patrick McGoohan, Brendan Gleeson, Angus McFadden and David O'Hara, to name but a few.
Yeah. McGoohan!
McGoohan!
Who's starring the prisoner?
McGoohan!
We're giving you a full-blooded show here, and we're going to be talking about the key creative components of Braveheart by covering the director, the writing, the cast. We'll pick out our highlights from the film before we round things off by summarising and rating the film out of 10. And as usual, our battle starts with the director. Following his small-scale directorial debut, The Man Without a Face, Gibson's sophomore effort was considerably more epic in scope. He initially turned the gig down, but after Terry Gilliam said no, they came back to Gibson and convinced him. Gibson was influenced by the historical epics he watched as a kid, like Spartacus and El Cid.
These films were great films, great films. You can still watch them and still get the same buzz off them. And it was the epic films that really inspired me to do Braveheart.
And was inspired by Kevin Costner's work as an actor and director on Dances with Wolves, and Costner's assertion to go big.
I must admit I burned a few brain cells on it. This is going to be a picnic.
So, Matt, what do you think of Gibson's work as director on Braveheart?
I think Gibson directs us like a broadsword to the face, doesn't he? Like, have that. Have this massive axe hurtling through the air. Have this huge score. Blood spraying onto the camera, have some of that as well. Big aerial shots of the mountains, have loads of those. Get everything in there. Horses jumping out of windows, have those, even if that does look a bit fake. But still, it's
Of course it does.
it's a rubbish horse. That's terrible. The one bad shot in the film. But
Frozen with fear. I'll defend every shot.
I think this is the very definition of go big or go home, and he just wants to outdo everything that's come before this. And what sticks out to me is the sense of authenticity he brings to Braveheart. Not accuracy. We'll clearly get on accuracy in a bit, but authenticity. Because all those films you mentioned, Luke, Spartacus, El Cid, Ben-Hur, the great, but the very, very Hollywood, the very clean. Everyone's got nice hair. Everyone's got good skin. All the clothes look really tailored, even though it was set centuries ago. Gibson doesn't want any of that here, and what he wants is for everything to feel as authentic as possible. I think the location shooting helps, because I know it took 5 months to shoot in total. The first 6 weeks, they were in Scotland for all the landscapes, and then moved to Ireland for the battle scenes, because nearby there were Irish Reserve troops, over 1,000, who Gibson used for extras in the battle scenes. Right. And as well as that a nearby racetrack where they could keep the horses. So that's why they were in Ireland as well. But you look at those landscapes and you think you'd have to be a hardy soul to survive out there in those days, which feeds in what Gibson wants you to feel about this life. And even worse when that rain is coming down, like that scene on the mountains when Wallace has made that offer to go to Edinburgh to unite the clans. It looks thoroughly miserable. But that's what you need, 100%. That's what it should be like. And it's the same in the battle scenes. I mean, again, talk about the ones he's influenced by. Spartacus has a great battle scene, of course it does, but even so, it's the kind of battle scene where at the end, the survivors look a little dusty. They've got a graze on the knee, maybe here and there, but that's about it. But not here. All the survivors covered in mud, covered in blood and guts and all kinds of crap. And it's just a feeling that the cast lived this life more than usual. That real authenticity that Gibson brings, that stands out to me. It's just a shame that in the Battle of Stirling, you get that one extra who's got that very, very 90s curtains haircut, and you get a bit close-up of him when he gets an arrow through the foot.
And I know you said about the Irish Reserves there, Matt, but Gibson actually got about 40 members of the actual Wallace clan and padded out the numbers in the fight sequences. So descendants of William Wallace. Yeah. So Gibson asked one of them the classic question, what do you wear under your kilt? Right. And the response was, your wife's lipstick. Brilliant, that, isn't it? In your face. No respect for Gibson whatsoever.
Specifically your wife.
Really specific.
Dear me.
Absolutely class that.
Yeah, great. Classic response.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
What about you, Westy? What do you think of the direction?
Yeah, I mean, it's monumental, isn't it? It's like Matt said, it's so big, it's so confident, it's just so big. I mean, there's the score as well, which we'll go into. I don't think there's a score that sits better with visuals than this does. It's just
it's
so
amazing.
powerfully done.
Are you ready for a war?
It's just powerful and moving. And Gibson brings like everything. The sound design as well is absolutely outrageous. So the battle sequences, like when they hit, it's just. That would be awful being in the middle of that. And just some of the things that he does, some of the direction that he brings, like a knife between the sword between the legs and just kind of people's throats getting cut, arms coming off, legs coming off. He's just like fearless and absolutely having a great time directing this. He's just, you can see like some of the behind the scenes stuff. He's only got 2 monitors. So he's going between 2 different sets and he's looking and he's just screaming down the megaphone. He knows exactly what he wants people to do. And it's just, he knows what he wants to get from this film. And it is a very, very, very selfishly directed film because it makes him look fucking incredible. He's just the main man. Everything that happens to him, you just go, that's the most masculine thing that could happen to anyone. And that's the most masculine reaction anyone could ever have to that problem. And it's in fucking Scotland, in the Highlands, and it's a fucking bloke with and his sword's bigger than he is. And he's just fucking loving it, isn't he? And I just think that's fantastic. And I think what we'd have to address as well is John Toll, who shot this, does an incredible job. The cinematography is beyond compare. Even now, I think it's one of the best films he shot. The authenticity of the camera work, the authenticity of them long lenses when you see the armies, and it gives that sense of scale and grandeur. I just think there's just such a security with this film. Gibson knows that it's going to succeed no matter what. It's going to be fucking drawn on all of the influences, like the way he cuts, like George Miller cuts in Mad Max, taking frames out so it's all a little bit more cut together.
That's excellent.
Just a little bit more jarring. And if you watch, I mean, I've watched this like freeze frame on something when he hits the guy and the head is bang and it splats. But if you watch it, and the way that he takes the frames out, he's taking 3 or 4 frames out so that it just cuts straight to that action. And he does that 3 or 4 times. It's genius, all of it. Well done, Mel Gibson.
Well done, Mel.
Mel done.
Mechanical horses had to be built for that Battle of Stirling Bridge scene. For obvious reasons.
There are certain things that you shouldn't and can't do with animals anymore. So I got together with Mick Rogers and said, let's make mechanical horses.
And a really impressive feat considering there were 150-pound metal skeletons covered in foam rubber and fake hair, and they were propelled at 30 miles an hour by nitrogen cylinders. And they were so convincing that the Irish Animal Protection Society complained that the treatment of horses, and only rescinded their complaint after being shown that behind-the-scenes footage because they were convinced. They obviously didn't see the one where the horse goes through the window. No. Just limp into the water.
Just bobs on the surface. And also, I think it's worth mentioning now, for that famous face paint, Gibson originally wanted the St. Andrew's cross on his face, but he's persuaded against it because simply back then it just didn't exist at all as a conception, that the national flag. Yet, considering every other historical inaccuracy, he was more than happy to wave through. It's a bit odd. This is one that's the straw that broke the camel's back.
A lot of that battle had to be reshot because the extras kept on forgetting to remove their watches, like wristwatches, and more unbelievably, sunglasses. How didn't anyone in charge in like the crew spot this? He's got some Ray-Bans on.
It's hardly fucking sunny as well, is it?
No, pissing it down.
Proper overcast.
And this? You're out of your mind.
Oh, it's good Scottish weather, madam. The rain is falling straight down. Oh, slightly to the sideline.
But they did miss one thing. If you look closely, is the English charge with their horses. In the left-hand corner of the shot, there's a white Jeep. Which obviously wasn't around in the 13th century. But that scene is huge. Gibson shot for 6 weeks, 500,000 feet of film, which equals about 90 hours of footage. So, we can forgive him the odd blunder. 90 hours. Well, I want to talk about what Gibson does in the way of visual storytelling. You mentioned, Westy, about the action scenes, and obviously they're clearly the most impressive thing from like a physical filmmaking point of view. And I do love it when a film makes it very clear. I think I've mentioned this before. Who's who? Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Because I can get lost off. But films with this much scale can easily in the editing just lose clarity completely. The army that you mentioned, Matt, they were used for both the Scottish and English sides. They just changed costumes depending on the shot. And Gibson said he thinks there's actually a guy in there who kills himself at one point.
Probably is, eh? Yeah, probably is.
Great. But moving to a completely different scene, when the king's son marries Isabella, there's absolutely no dialogue in that scene. But just from the looks of the key players, the two getting married, the king, the prince's right-hand man, we know exactly what they're thinking. And Gibson does a really great work in capturing that, I think.
Yeah, it's the focus pulls as well from John Toll.
Great, yeah. And then the tar or oil that's poured on the Wallace clan when they're storming York, we see the devastation and how flammable that is. So when we see it being poured on the battlefield of Falkirk, we know it's going to be set ablaze, but we don't quite know how yet.
Yeah.
Love that. Really, really great visual storytelling.
Yeah.
And the other thing about that scene, though, the Siege of York, is Gibson built an actual proper working battering ram outside, I think it's called Trim Castle in Ireland for that. And of all people, Paul Newman turned up to have a look because actually nearby, Paul Newman had a camp for children with cancer. And he'd heard about this. He wanted to take a look because he heard it was really impressive. So he actually ended up staying on set for that scene, and he thanked all the cast for visiting the area as well.
Oh, wonderful, man. Man of the people, Newman.
Oh, of course he is.
He is
Got
really
some salad dressing for them.
Boxes of it.
Boxes, loads of Newman's own. There you are. Loads of extras. Loads of dressing.
Gibson's efforts were hugely rewarded. The film took over $200 million at the box office. Critics loved it, and the film took home 5 Oscars.
Peter Frampton, Paul Patterson, and Lois Burwell for Braveheart.
Lon Bender and Per Hallberg for Braveheart.
The Oscar goes to John Toll for Braveheart.
Mel Gibson for Braveheart.
Braveheart.
It still holds a strong critical reception. However, in 2005, Empire magazine named Braveheart the worst film ever to win Best Picture, beating the likes of A Beautiful Mind, Forrest Gump, Rocky, and Ordinary People. Shakespeare in Love. Nowhere to be seen on that list, Westy. Furious?
Absolutely furious. And do you know why? Because that's bullshit.
I thought it was going to be an academic study. No, just it's bullshit.
It's bullshit.
Wrong.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, it's crazy. Braveheart didn't have too much competition that year, to be honest.
Apollo 13, Babe, Braveheart, Sense and Sensibility, The Postman.
Not a classic lineup. Heat, not even considered.
Yeah.
A crime.
Yeah.
Don't waste my motherfucking time!
Despite a lot of negatives in the aftermath of its release, Gibson did a great job behind the camera and made one of the most beloved films of the 90s.
Yes,
absolutely.
The screenplay for Braveheart was written by Randall Wallace, no relation.
I'm Agent Johnson. This is Special Agent Johnson.
Oh, how you doing?
No relation.
A former martial artist and singer-songwriter who was inspired to write his first produced screenplay after a trip to Edinburgh Castle where he saw the statues of Robert the Bruce and William Wallace.
My wife and I were in Edinburgh, and we walked into the castle there and saw the statue of William Wallace. I thought, this is a Wallace, a famous Wallace, and I'd never heard of him.
Westy, do you want to start us off with screenplay? Your thoughts?
Is he not related, though? Does he not think he is? Is he not? Is that not why he made this so fantastical?
It would explain a lot.
It's a fairy tale. It's just he basically looked at the statues and just went, "Wow, I can make up a good story about these two guys."
He's named Wallace as well.
Wow, this will be easy. I know how to spell that. And there's some lovely bits in this film. There's some really lovely bits. It's really tight from a story point of view. It's really good because the arcs are there. The love story is totally believable. I think that's fantastic. I think the Uncle Argyle character is great, and it's not true. A lot of it's not true. I would say 97% of this is bullshit.
That's really strange, Westy, because I've put 97% as well.
Yeah, but that's about right, isn't it?
It is.
And like the credits are right. That's 1%. At the start and the end, that's 2%. And then there's mountains in Scotland, and it rains. So there you go. He's taking liberties with it, and fine. But I think the liberties that he does take is just purely entertainment value. It's a film, and I love the film because I love the romanticism of it. I love the grandeur of it. It's just fantastic, and it's just don't take that much notice of it. But on that note, I will give you my top 3 historical inaccuracies in Braveheart, even though I've got about fucking 500 written down.
Yeah, we could be on forever.
But I'll give you my top 3. Are you ready? Here we go.
Okay, here we go.
Right.
Westy's top 3 historical inaccuracies of Braveheart.
Great. Number 3.
Yeah.
Braveheart wasn't even his nickname. That was Robert the Bruce.
And I took it from him when I betrayed him, and I saw it in his face on the battlefield. And it's tearing me apart.
Yeah, because Robert the Bruce, whenever he left Scotland, said if he's killed away from Scotland, to cut his heart out and take it back and bury it in Scotland, which is why he was called Braveheart.
Right.
Okay.
Wow.
Right, yeah.
Bad
Number
start.
2.
Yeah.
Prima Noctis.
Yeah.
It didn't happen anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
At least of all, Scotland.
Perhaps the time has come to reinstitute an old custom. Grant them prima nocte.
That's such a ridiculous thing to put into account, but it's just so emotionally charged, isn't it?
Oh,
Your
it
wedding
really
night,
is. It really
and the
is.
noble comes and takes your wife away, and you just got married, and you fucking bastard. And then they got married in fucking secret to stop it from happening. It drives the story forward, but again, that's bullshit.
Yes.
And number 1.
Okay,
We
here
did
we go.
mention it there, the Battle of Stirling Bridge, right?
Yeah.
Which is how they won. There was a bridge that bottlenecked the English and they couldn't get over it. So the Scottish could basically take them out as they were coming over the bridge, and it really just reduced the forces. They wouldn't have won otherwise without the bridge. This is like making bridge on the River Kwai and calling it the River Kwai. So they didn't put that in there, and they actually said to him, he's like, well, where's the bridge in Stirling Bridge? And Mel Gibson was like, well, it got in the way. And then said, yeah, that's what the English thought.
The actual facts of William Wallace's life, as established by historians, are minuscule.
Yeah, it would have just been a really boring battle. They could not have ran at the English forces the way that they do in that battle and won. It's just outrageous. Wow. It's outrageous.
It's kind of sketchy, and you have to fill in.
There's a lot. The face paint was 1,000 years too late, and like you said, the tartan kilts were a few hundred years too early.
There's this historian called Sharon L. Crosser who was asked about the historical inaccuracies here, and she said, well, it's like a film about colonial America showing the men wearing 20th century business suits.
Yeah.
Oh, that really brings it into perspective.
much like the Patriot.
Yeah.
Also sorry.
I do like the idea of Gordon Gekko going into war with his mobile phone and a musket.
I'm working on the Silverberg boys.
Rip their fucking throats out. Stuff them in your garbage compactor.
In the real battle of Stirling Bridge, the bridge actually collapsed. One of the theories being a deliberate attempt by the English to stop the Scots in their pursuit as the English retreated.
Yeah.
Some of the inaccuracies of the piece probably come from the fact that Wallace wrote the screenplay first, then did historical research.
It's kind of sketchy, and you have to fill in.
He just saw the statues.
That's amazing. Because, you know, the opening lines of the film, which is like Robert the Bruce doing the voiceover.
Yeah.
And he's like, basically just saying, for the want of a better word, or the want of a better term, he's like, listen, right, I'm full of shit.
Yeah.
But history is written by those who've hung heroes, so this might be true. But it's basically just going, people will call me a liar. That's like the first voiceover.
People will call me a liar. You are a
liar.
You're a
fucking liar. So it gives him license to do anything you want.
Historians from England will say I am a liar. But history is written by those who have hanged heroes.
Well, Wallace said that he did that to write the story first before doing the research, which, I mean, crazy way. He said he did it to capture the drama of the story. And his main source of inspiration was the 15th century poem by Blind Harry entitled The Acts and Deeds of the Illustrious and Valiant Champion Sir William Wallace, or more commonly referred to as the Wallace.
Right.
Well, two things I want to mention quickly about the screenplay. Firstly, the amount of iconic dialogue in the film. You mentioned there, Westy, that it is a bit of a fairy tale, but I think the words are really, really powerful and delivered with such conviction by Gibson that you truly believe it, which is one of the main reasons that the film has endured for me.
And I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny.
The freedom speech at the Battle of Stirling Bridge is goosebump stuff. It really gets you going.
That they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
It was inspired by the St. Crispin Day speech from Shakespeare's Henry V.
Yeah.
Upon St. Crispin's Day!
So history is relied upon heavily in the screenplay, just not necessarily the right history.
Yeah. The right notes, not in the right order.
And secondly, I'm a big fan of the much-needed comic relief in the film. Gibson said if this movie didn't have any funny bits, it'd be fucking unbearable.
Yeah.
And he's not wrong, because there's not much outside of heartbreak, pain, and savagery. For 3 hours. But it is punctuated by the odd moment of humour, mainly delivered by Brendan Gleeson and David O'Hara, Williams to consiglieres Hamish and Steve.
I'm prettier than this man. Excellent. Stephen is my name. I'm the most wanted man on my island.
Your island? You mean Ireland?
Yeah, it's mine.
The Lord tells me he can get me out of this mess, but he's pretty sure you're fucked.
What you waiting for, boy?
Here, you can do it. I'll hold him down.
Jesus. Where's Wallace?
You're a madman.
I've come to the right place then.
I mean, this character of Stephen is paper thin, but he's brought to life by O'Hara, who I really like generally.
Yeah.
Where do you call home? Where do you lay your head down?
Home, Glasgow.
Yeah, and where exactly might that be?
That's Scotland.
Scotland.
And you can't beat Brendan Gleeson in anything, obviously.
No, he's brilliant.
Amazing.
Chilly out, huh?
What about you, Matt? Thoughts on the screenplay?
I can't decide whether it was either written in all caps or written in crayon, to be honest.
Like help from George Lucas on an Etch-a-Sketch.
Just like bam, 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 this and this and this. But like, no, there are aspects that aren't bad, but overall, it's a film where I think if you list the things in it that you like, the writing is going to be quite near the bottom. It certainly is for me.
Sure.
So,
very bottom. Yeah.
What I want to mention about it is the two romantic subplots that play out throughout the film. First of all, you have Wallace and Merrin, and I think that plays out really well. I think it's very nicely. They know each other as children. I think McCormick gives a really good performance. Her character makes sense. Totally buy the attraction between the two. I could live without the very awkward sex scene because it's just weird.
Horrible. Yeah,
like
awful.
Really creepy approaching it from behind. Yeah. Looks freezing as well. Like
it's horrible. It looks freezing.
Too cold to be doing anything, surely. Like really terrible sex scene.
Horrible.
Yeah, so her character, fine, and then obviously she gets killed, which is horrific, and it's like an early example of fridginess, when people say fridginess, killing off a female character to give the male character like a narrative arc and motivation for the rest of the film. And I do think it's a bold claim to say that like Wallace's desire to set Scotland free was all down to his wife being murdered and nothing to do with his actual desire for power.
I came back home to raise crops and, God willing, a family. If I can live in peace, I will.
But I still think it's an interesting way to take that subplot, so I think it's absolutely fine. But I do think it's unfortunate that it then gets undercut with the other romantic subplot between Wallace and Isabella, which I do not buy for one little bit. Like, for me, that is the single worst example of Hollywood bullshit in this film. Like, a romance just crowbarred in there just to remind everyone how hunky and how attractive Mel Gibson is. Because it just doesn't make sense. You know, Wallace is supposed to be so wrapped up in grief, he's willing to go to war to England over it, but he's not that wrapped up in grief that he doesn't fancy a bit with someone else first time that comes along.
But he can see Murren's strength in her, you see. That's That's how he gets away with that.
That clears it up.
Yeah, and then she's pregnant at the end, which completely just betrays everything.
Yeah.
It's historically ridiculous.
It is. I mean, it just undercuts everything about Mervyn. It undercuts her appearance in the crowd right at the end. And like you see there, Wesley, I mean, I'm far from a historical scholar, but I can still remember first time watching this and Isabella brings up the fact that she's pregnant. I was like, what?
Your blood dies with you. A child who is not of your line grows in my belly.
So, like, his illegitimate child is going to be King of England. Get out.
Yeah.
That's
or she
bullshit.
might just be saying that to Longshanks as he's dying breath, so that's all he's going to hear, which is torture for him, which is great. But, you know, maybe. But I don't think he's in the tent that long.
Yeah. So, yeah, the romance angle for me, it doesn't work primarily because of the second one, that the Force and F. They kept it just at Mervyn, excellent, but bringing in Isabel as well just doesn't work for me at all.
And taking that into the final scene, as the axe is being swung down towards Wallace, Murren, who plays in the crowd, she's got a smirk on her face, which, if you look at it from that perspective, looks like she's happy that he's about to get his head hacked off because she's just smiling away. Go on, that's it.
That's what you get.
Yeah.
Back brief
that
acid
axe takes a fucking age to come down.
It does. Yeah, she loves it. So the overriding legacy of Braveheart is that of playing fast and loose with history.
It's kind of sketchy and you have to fill in.
You're putting it very mildly, of course, but the dialogue is brought to glorious life by the cast, and for a 3-hour film, it moves like a train.
Oh, flies by.
We've got a huge ensemble cast again this month, fellas. Of course, we are starting with Gibbo, and that means it's over to you, Westy.
Of course it is. Yeah, the main man, the central focus of the whole film, and he knows it. Mm-hmm. But he's also handling directing duties. Big directing duties. Very, very similar to Costner in Dances with Wolves, I have to say. But I think from the acting side, this shows how good of an actor Mel Gibson really was. Or, you know, not as much anymore. But at this time, this is him, you know, in his prime.
Yeah.
He's just...
peak Gibson.
He's brilliant in it. He's just so engaging on the screen. So watchable. There's all them longing stares and there's this beautifully emotive kind of looks, and he has to do his scenes in 2 or 3 takes because he's directing the film.
Yeah.
So his acting is kind of an afterthought to what everyone else is doing. It feels like someone else is directing this film, and he's totally immersed in it.
Really impressive.
Yeah, it's really, really impressive how good he is in this. I mean, we can talk about his accent all day, and that's an easy thing to pin, where it's like, oh, well, he's supposed to be Scottish. I mean, the Sons of Scotland speech that you talked about, he's nailed it there.
I don't think he's too bad.
When you get to that point, he's great, but his opening line doesn't work for him. When he's like, you dropped your rock. It's like, right, and you're kind of like, right,
that's pretty good to me.
Where are we here? Well, that's me doing it, obviously. I mean, that's miles away. But when he gets to the, you know, he does his speeches and he's shouting, it works for me. And a big deciding factor was he had dinner with Sean Connery, of all people, you know, the classic, speaks Scottish in any role whatsoever, no matter if you're a Russian
Irish,
submarine
Czech,
commander.
Yeah, Russian.
Whatever. Egyptian. Brilliant.
Are you Spanish peacock?
I'm not Spanish, I'm Egyptian.
You said you were from Spain. You're a liar.
But he had dinner with Connery, and Connery asked for his meal, and Gibson said it was the way he pronounced goulash.
I always have rolls with my goulash.
Fantastic. If you can imagine, should we all have a try? It was like
goulash.
Goulash.
You've got to do that. Why have you got to do this? Goulash.
The side of your mouth's got to go up when you see it.
Even though he doesn't do that. He around a lesson.
In honour of Gibson as William Wallace, a 13-foot sculpture was erected in the car park of Wallace's monument in Stirling. It was defaced several times and returned to the sculptor in 2009. And I think you'll understand when you see the picture.
The shouty one.
Yes, it says freedom on it.
Braveheart on the shield and freedom underneath.
It's awful.
That is terrible. That looks like the one that did of Ronaldo, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that one that did a Rambo.
I thought Rambo, the one in Hope. Yeah, that was awful as well, isn't it?
I think what's interesting though is that he took a lot of encouragement to start in it, because I think understandably reluctant to do both jobs at the same time, but they would only give him the funding to do it if he agreed to star. So originally, before he did that, he did want either Brad Pitt or Jason Patric at the time, which I think, to be fair, back then I can kind of understand Jason Patric. Maybe not so much now, but he's more of a name back then. But other names in consideration, Daniel Day-Lewis, which I can really see, Liam Neeson, Christophe Lambert, and unbelievably, Robin Williams.
Williams.
Like the Mrs. Doubtfire accent.
Hello! Who are you going for, Matt, in your cast?
I'm going for McGoohan because, who else would I go for? It's Panto season. Boo!
He's behind you.
Behind you. That's what you want from this performance. Like, because Braveheart is such a film of extremes. There's no nuance anywhere. William Wallace is the noblest, most inspiring, most pure-hearted hero to ever live. So the villain's got to be the complete opposite of that. Has to be hideous and evil with zero redeeming qualities. And the great thing is, I don't think McGoohan cares. He's like, he's an absolute bastard. Yeah, I can do that. That's absolutely fine.
He's loving it.
That's
no
right.
problem.
It's like a real, Wales will hit theirs as well.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Like a lot of actors, like say when they play a villain, they're like, oh, well, I wanted to make him 3-dimensional. I wanted to find the humanity in him. The humanity in the McGoohan's like, nah, he's just horrible, and I love it.
Yeah, just pantomime villain.
Yeah, and it's fine. Right from the first time you see him, that voiceover saying,
it was widely whispered that for the princess to conceive, Longshanks would have to do the honours himself.
Yeah, he probably would as well, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
horrible man. Like, completely despises his own son. The mere sight of him would only encourage an enemy to take over the whole country. That's a brilliant line about his son. Throwing Philip out the window.
The present situation.
Bit harsh.
That's outrageous.
It is outrageous.
But again, we're talking about the comic elements. That comes from nowhere.
Yeah.
Talking about the current situation. Like fucking hell.
Yeah. Sending Isabella on a mission to try and seek peace, but actually he's just using it as a distraction while he gets reinforcements rustled up.
I dispatched them before I sent your wife.
And he says even if she does get killed, well, that's fine, because the King of France will have a reason to join in with him. I mean, just ultimate movie bastard behaviour from beginning to end.
His lines are so good.
There's no shades of grey.
There's no shades of grey. It's really in this. We've already mentioned Connery. Connery was first approached to play Longshanks, and he's called Longshanks because in reality he was very tall, 6'2". And Longshanks means long legs back then, so that's where the name comes from. Right. Connery was doing just cause instead, which is why they went with McGoohan. But yeah, his line delivery is just outstanding.
It's fantastic.
The trouble with Scotland is it's full of Scots.
The trouble with Scotland is that it's full of Scots.
Like, full of Scots. No one's delivered a line like that ever before. And
just as good.
Yeah.
Shall we retire?
Yeah.
Just as good.
And the one that always makes me laugh, probably the biggest laugh of the film, is when he comes up with a plan to get all the nobles on board with the taxes and the prima nocte. And that soldier goes, oh, splendid plan, sire. And he just goes, is it?
Is it? Is it? Is
and then it cuts. Yeah. Is it?
Yeah. Really funny.
A most excellent idea, sire.
Is it?
No shade, no complexity. But I absolutely love it. I just think he tears up the screen whenever he turns up. He's amazing.
He's great.
Yeah.
That cut. Is it?
Is it?
Cut. It's crazy. Oh, okay. So goodies and baddies in the cast for us here. A pretty much iconic performance from Gibson, and McGoohan does great work hamming it right up.
Yeah.
Overall, a really strong cast.
Yeah. Brilliant.
We've picked out 3 of the best as our highlights for Braveheart, and we'll let Westy take it away with your first pick.
Yeah. My first pick is the catalyst for what drives Wallace forward to do what he does, and that's the death of Murren. And then when he returns to that scene, when Murren gets a throat cut, it's just heartbreaking because it's just a close-up.
Horrible.
It's a beautiful close-up, and it's just like you don't see anything, but you fucking hear it and you feel it. And it's like, now let this scrapper come to me, and it's just like on the soundtrack. Yeah, and it cuts to that wide shot, and you think, right, what's going to happen? And you just see glimpses of him just coming past, and he's on the horse, and you just think, right, and he comes up behind them flames in slow motion,
Cinematic.
Who doesn't want to be that guy? You're in serious bother now, to be fair. He comes up there and you just think, oh, what's he doing? He's given up. His hands are on the back of his head. He's bereft with grief. He's
so slow as well.
That's just
so slow.
The horse and just the close-ups and that hand of the chainmail grabbing the horse. And then some fucking, I don't even know what it is, nunchucks? Bruce Lee. Straight across, but it's that slow, and then it goes to that fast whip, bang, and then it's just fucking legs off, throwing swords at people,
throwing swords.
Now, when that leg comes off, you go, geez, and that thing he's got, that bone is fucking in the neck,
straight over the skull,
and you just think, yes, right, okay. Then you're getting a glimpse of what's going to happen later in these action sequences, and you just think, Jesus Christ, is this going to be magnified? And it is. This is just like a taste of what's going to happen. Like, but you see, like his thought process, and you go, this guy's a genius because he's technical. And you've got Hamish's dad, but I mean, he just gets wounded in every single fight he's in.
Yeah, he does.
He's crap.
Crap luck.
And I love that bit. It's really funny when Gleeson's trying to pull the arrow out. Boing! Trying to fucking pull it out. It's great. And you see everyone banding together behind him, and he's made a decision. And when he just has that moment, and this is what I was talking about with them long and stays and that kind of emotive performance from Gibson, and he looks down, he looks the guy up and down, and he just looks at him, and it cuts to like kicking him down the hill. And it's just a beautiful moment, and he just puts him up neck again. Then you see everything. It's just and the guy kind of it lands on him, and he just kind of lets him go and falls, and he thinks, well, that's it, over with. And then everyone, this kind of boxed my head in for years, and I'm thinking, what are they saying? And they're going, Macaulay. And then they start, and they go, Macaulay, and then they start going, Wallace. So I've done a bit of research on it. It's actually factually correct.
Wow.
Thanks to Randall Wallace's. This is the research he did just before it came out, obviously, and they overdubbed it later. But McCawlish means son of Wallace. So McCawlish was basically his dad. So what he does is, because Campbell comes back and starts praising his dad and said, like, son of Wallace, and then they start saying Wallace himself. Right. So it's a real kind of celebration of his family, which I think is fantastic.
Fantastic.
But that as a sequence, I mean, fucking hell. Nunchucks. Scotland. Brilliant. It's just great, isn't it?
It is wonderful. It is.
What a scene.
Wonderful.
Brilliant scene.
Yeah. Matt, what scene are you going for?
Well, we've talked about Stirling already, so I'm going to go for the second battle scene, the Battle of Falkirk, because it's built up so beautifully in narrative terms, because we know Longshanks is going to be there. We know that he's enlisted the Irish. He's bringing in forces from Wales.
Arrows cost money. Use up the Irish. The dead cost nothing.
So this is going to be bigger than Stirling. This is going to be, the face-off between Wallace and Longshanks. And we've already seen the first battle. So the tension is sky high already. You know what to expect. And when those two armies go hurtling at each other again, you're just sitting there, yes, great, this is going to be brilliant again, fantastic, great. Which is why it's so funny and so effective when they just stop and greet each other, because obviously the Irish are never going to fight on behalf of the English. It's such a brilliant turn of events. It's really funny. But then the battle proper starts, and again, limbs hacked off, blood everywhere. They sign people on fire at the same time. Campbell gets taken out, one injury too many, which is really sad because he's really great in the film, James Cosmore. Yeah. And some prime bastard dialogue from Longshanks as well when he tells the archers to fire. And the second command points out, well, we'll hit our own men. Yes, but we'll hit theirs as well. Like really patronizing. Don't get about anything else. Amazing. Just
send in the reserves.
Just sublime line delivery from McGoohan. Every line is really horrible, but really funny as well.
Yes, but we'll hit theirs as well. We have reserves. Attack. Bring me Wallace. Alive if possible. Dead. Just good.
And then, but of course, it's when everything goes south for Wallace here, and the emotion of it really hits home hard. Like when he sees Mornay and Lachlan turn and lead their troops in battle, and he doesn't understand. Oh, that's devastating. Even worse so is when he realizes that's Robert the Bruce, who's under that helmet alongside throughout. That sheer devastation, and he can't even comprehend it. He just cannot get his head around it. And every ally he thought he had in the world is gone. Every chance of unifying Scotland is gone. His army's in pieces. It's back to guerrilla tactics, back to square one. It's devastating emotionally, and it works so well on screen. It's fantastic because it kind of upends where you think the battle is going to be like.
Yeah. And it's like, get him out of here. That's a great moment. And he gets him on the horse and rides up.
Well, I'm going to go for the end when the game is up. William's been duped and is set to be killed in the morning. Hamish and Stephen have sneaked in there in disguise.
Yeah.
Just like a similar scene in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Exactly. Doesn't end the same, though.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Gibson is aware of this, given the audience false hope, because the beats are really similar in the two scenes. A crowd baying for blood, an evil king, a public spectacle. So, I'm expecting the same thing here. William's going to be okay, but not a bloody bit of it.
No.
And William had to go in the end to be reunited with his true love, obviously. And that final line is a great callback.
The king dies.
Yeah.
Very conveniently at that moment.
Because Isabella says he'll be dead within the month, the night before, and now all of a sudden he's dead with freedom ringing in his ears.
Fantastic.
It is a summer ending, but it's strangely uplifting. Wallace is a man who stood by his principles right to the bitter end, and he will not bend at all, even when he's being stretched. When shooting the scene, Gibson accidentally hanged himself and he blacked out.
Yeah.
He said that the next thing he remembers is him on the floor with loads of faces staring down at him. Really dangerous. Christ. Really dangerous.
Yeah.
And the final disembowelment of Wallace was originally shot in much more graphic detail.
Of course it was.
Cut after, of course it was.
Yeah.
But it was cut after the threat of an NC-17. For the best for me, because this is an emotional moment, and the last thing you want to see is just blood and guts everywhere, entrails.
Yeah, it's much better just focusing on his expressions and his reactions.
Yeah.
He puts it in your mind, doesn't it?
It does put you in your mind, yeah. So the beginning, middle, and end covered very nicely in our highlights there. A somber note to end on, but sprinkled with a thread of hope right at the end of the battle.
Yeah.
The final segment of the cutting room is to summarise and rate the film out of 10. This segment is not unlike the Battle of Stirling Bridge, really. Inspirational, overlong, and there's often some bloodshed. No bridge either.
No bridge.
So, Matt, do you want to go first? Your summary and score for Braveheart.
Yeah. Braveheart. I think the key to Braveheart is don't take it too seriously. Because it's something where it takes a historical figure and it prints the legend, not the truth.
It's kind of sketchy and you have to fill in.
Yeah. And that's the level it works on. It's nothing deep, there's nothing profound here. It's just a full-blown, big, really big epic that did improve on everything in the genre that came before. And you have to respect that. I do have issues with the writing, the romantic subplots in particular really strike a bum note. But it's relentlessly entertaining. And 3 hours just fly by. And when you get to the end, when Robert the Bruce asks the men to bleed with him, and Brendan Gleeson steps forward and throws the broadsword in the air with James Horner's score, if you're not like fist pumping then, and your bottom lip isn't wobbling a little bit, then you're a bit of a Longshanks, quite frankly. So
dead inside.
Dead inside, absolutely. So for me, don't think about it too much. Just let it sweep your cynicism away. And you'll get everything there is to be gotten out of this film. It's a 9 from me.
9. Big. Very big.
Very big.
Well, it was a huge film for me in the mid-90s. I absolutely loved it. But it dropped off the face of the earth because of the reasons that we've discussed. I was pleasantly surprised upon this rewatch that it still retained its power. Its power to inspire, its power to disgust. It's a great piece of filmmaking with great performances and a sublime James Horner score.
Is it?
But there is the Gibson cloud looming over it, and I am let down completely by the love story aspect of it. It is effectively the greatest love story ever told in the opening third. I'm there.
Yeah.
It's got me.
Yeah. It's Romeo and Juliet almost.
It is,
that
but
level
it's left in tatters after Gibson abandons that once he lays eyes on Isabella.
Yeah.
But he's still banging on about Murren as well at the same time. It's very odd. It's just a very strange choice.
Yeah.
And the fact that you know when you're watching it that 97% of it is inaccurate, we've already established that, Westy.
Yes, we have.
But that shouldn't really matter too much. It's not a documentary, like you said. So, considering all of that, I'm also going to go for a 9 out of 10.
All right.
Yes. 2 9s, Westy. Bring it home.
Bring it home. Yeah, I mean, I love this film. Everyone knows I love this film. I'm not ashamed to say I love this film, and I love it because it is, like we've said, pure entertainment. It's pure cinema. It for somebody's second film to act in it and direct it.
Must have made an impression.
All right.
For everyone who's in the cast to bring such an A game to it, there's nothing much I can criticise apart from the inaccuracies. But if you that's not what I'm watching it for. I'm watching it to escape. I'm watching it to be entertained. I'm watching it to be moved. It's an emotional film. It's a really emotional film. These themes still exist and they're still relevant. And I think everyone can relate to what this film is about. I never ever tire of this film. I'll go back to it time and time again. It's a real pick me up. It's a real I'm hungover, Braveheart. Oh, it's a real there's nothing else on Braveheart. I'm doing the dishes, Braveheart. Oh, I'm just kidding. I've got to do the Hoover, Braveheart.
I've got a wedding to go to, Braveheart.
Braveheart. On my phone,
romantic night in, Braveheart love.
Yeah. I'm at a wedding. I'm going to say, prima nocta, is it? But no, it's a great film for me. It's not perfect for a lot of people, but it is perfect for me. So it's a 10.
10, yeah. Completely expected that. Very nice. So overall, Braveheart comes out with an impressive 28 out of 30. A large score for a large film.
Yeah.
If you like the video literally, please also like the video physically as well and subscribe to our YouTube accounts. Share with all the movie fans that you know. To our viewers who are late to this particular battle and are coming to it 12 months late, you can become an All the Right Movies Patreon supporter and gain access to a brand new bonus video every month. That really helps us out, and it means that we can continue to put out these videos as well. You also get access to our podcast archive, over 120 exclusive podcasts.
Ooh,
big stuff.
There's a lot.
Our podcast archive is available to our patrons, but you can also buy them individually at a very reasonable price on our website, alltherightmovies.com. There are over 200 hours of comprehensive making-of stories, some very big laughs, and the usual ATRM opinions on some of the very best films that Tinseltown has to offer.
Yes, for pennies. Pennies.
Pennies, literally
we're not talking
pennies.
about pounds, literally pennies.
Or cents, or whatever your currency may be.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, that should be available to change on the website, is it not?
I don't know. Let's try it. Try it and find out.
Leave it.
We'll find out.
What about sterling?
Sterling. Very nice. And that is a wrap on that bombshell. That is a wrap, everyone.
Lovely.
Thank you so much for watching. A special big thanks to our Patreon supporters. They are the very best, following us into battle every time and coming out victorious.
Beautiful.
Yes, they do.
Wonderful, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Now we are off to do something normal, Matt, Westy.
Yes, I think we are.
Right, I think I'm probably just going to sack York.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't get dressed up for nothing.